and then the other one to keep
Okay.
moving away.
We're recording.
I guess there's two types of ejection seats. I think they all use the rockets now, but the A6s use the shells.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
the rock-
basically, it was ordnance.
Yeah, the rockets, the A6 had to use shells instead of rockets because the two guys sat side by side, and if the one went out without the other one, he'd burn the other one to death with the rocket motor, so they used shells to shoot
Yeah.
guns.
Yes, you have, and we thought board meetings were dangerous. Turns out punching out of an aircraft with a rocket on your tail.
They've increased the survivability quite a bit, I guess, but it's still.
Yeah. I only one I heard was Bob Straw.
It's on?
Okay, is it 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1? I'm going to call to order the Sweetwater Union High School District Proposition O Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. It's Wednesday, September 11, 2013. Call to order, take a roll. We got Kevin O'Neill, Nick Bernovich, Dave Butler, Terry McCurney, and Robert Carrieto are here with Edgar, John, and Bob absent. Okay, I guess we could have taken a roll, but we just did it. Let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Only today, as you know, we can remain standing. It's kind of hard to believe. How many years has this been? 12 years. I think all of us remember probably where we were. If we could have maybe a 15-20-second moment of silence for all the persons who perished on that day and everything that's transpired since. Thank you. The third item, the approval of minutes, and let me just say, Ceci is probably the most conscientious person in this room. He's been trying so hard on the minutes, and I just didn't get it. It'll be next time. Let me just say it's, I'll lay it on the steps of the chair not to get to it in detail, because I do read those carefully. So we'll table 3 until the next meeting with the minutes of this one and then the next one. And then this one that's on here, we'll consider next meeting. The fourth item is non-agenda public comment. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment? I'd like to recognize Ms. Shears. We have 3 minutes.
Good evening. The last meeting, I spoke and asked for you all to request the backup documentation that the board members receive every month. During my comment, I also alluded to the fact that, remember, this meeting last month was on the 14th. I alluded to the fact that the information that the board would be reviewing would be on the 19th, was already up on board docs, that I had stumbled across it. That backup information includes what school, the project, the contractor, and the cost. Last Friday, I returned home from my beautician to be handed a card from my husband from ESI International. It's a private investigative firm. My husband was quite upset. Quite upset. I was a bit shaken. I called the gentleman. He did not answer. He called me back. He said he was just now getting back to his office, which is in Rancho Bernardo. I live off Palm Alley. He then proceeded to tell me, I asked, what the call was about. He asked me where did I get the information that I had alluded to in that meeting. said, well, did you listen to the tape? What tape? Did you review the CD? What CD? I then proceeded to basically tell him, do not ever show up on my doorstep unannounced again. Number one. Number two, I resent the fact that my tax dollars are being used by a private investigator to investigate me. He said he could tell by my passion that I was telling the truth. What I didn't tell him then was that I had proof of what I was talking about. But I really didn't need proof, did I? Because all you had to do, Mr. Calhoun, was to go on the website. It was right there. It was there that evening. It was there the next day, up until the board meeting. I am not a stranger to this district. Mr. Calhoun, you could have approached me at the board meeting. You could have called me. But no, a private investigator was sucked on me in a manner to intimidate me. That's all it was, point blank. But the bottom line is this: why are tax dollars being used? At that board meeting the following week, ESI International came up. Our board has already spent $100,000. Brand wanted $100,000 more. They told him not right now. It's going to be reviewed again. So he didn't have the authorization to do it, but he did it anyway. Mr. Calhoun, I really feel that your actions are quite unprofessional and contemptible. Clearly an act of intimidation by Dr. Brand. You didn't stick the PI on me, he did. I don't answer to you, and I don't answer to Dr. Brand. Contrary to the picture you paint to so many, I am quite a credible person in this community. The FBI thinks so, the DA thinks so, Sacramento thinks so, and so does Washington, D.C. I really do have better things to do with my time than to come to these meetings and go to the board meetings. But I do so because I care about this community. That's the only reason. I'm not running for office. I'm not a mover and a shaker. I don't know any politicians other than Sweetwater. I am now strengthened with reality of what I'm doing is worthwhile. I just saw a commercial in which Rumsfeld is, and I quote, "You gotta be the son of a that tells the prez what others are afraid to." Well, I guess I'm that son of a, and I'm not going away. And I thoroughly resent a private investigator showing up on my doorstep, handing this card to my mentally challenged daughter. I thoroughly do. And Mr. McKierney, you of all people should want to know why. Our tax dollars are being spent in such a manner.
I think we all would like to have them.
Because the information was there, right there. And I have proof. Maddie Agato, who many of you, she was here last time. I called her and I said, "Maddie, I just saw this. I found this and it can't be true." And she was teasing me, "Oh, you must have gotten your Cheers as Merlot." We joked about it. She went on there and found it too. My only regret in bringing it up is that some poor employee here is going to probably get wrung out for it. Because I'm sure they entered it and hit, you know what I mean, put it in. I am not an IT person. I don't have access to your system. I do have a daughter that works here. I do have a son-in-law who works here. They have both been talked about in the blogs. My husband has been talked about in the most vile manner. That's who you two work for. He infuriates me. But the only thing that keeps me going is knowing when the trials are over, he's going to be gone. And we're going to get somebody in here to run this district. But you can let him know. You better not ever send a PI after me again unless he knows what he's going after. And the next time you take information to him about me, you better take it all. Like there was an audio, there was a video, and it was on board docs. So I didn't break into your system. I apologize for taking you so much time. Thank you.
Well, since you asked me, what information were you supposed to have had that you didn't, that you had, or the information on the public site?
Yes, sir.
Was this
But it
discussed at
was-
the last meeting? Or what?
Yes, sir, but it's called backup documentation that the board members get every month. And you all have never gotten it. In 4 years, I've never seen it in your packet. It itemizes how Propo monies are being spent per site. And I've been asking that you all get that. When I went on the district website, because you were not here, but I handed out packets to everybody, and I wanted to show you examples. The information that would have been given to the board members that Tuesday was already up. And so I copied it. And another point I made was, it's so ridiculous that you all don't get it. Then here it is up a week beforehand, and as you all have said, you don't have any power to say no, but it's just informative. It's not like it was classified. Am I right?
Yeah, let me maybe just to, because kind of summarize this. Essentially what happened, and let's elaborate on what you've already said. Essentially at the last meeting, Mrs. Cheers came in with the Board of Trustees agenda items that was more normally posted on the website Friday before the board meeting at 5 o'clock.
At the last possible.
At the last possible second. The last possible second pursuant to the Brown Act. Apparently, and you have to be determined how, those agenda items that,
Just that backup information is all that
the backup information that really became public that Friday was up on the district website earlier. Mrs. Cheers came here Wednesday, the date of a bond oversight committee, and gave us the material and passed it out to us. Subsequent to that meeting, I went through, and because every week when I go do the chair report, I download it and look through all these agenda items. And in fact, for this meeting, I did it and put it in one PDF and gave it to everybody. And I mentioned at the board meeting during the chair report, wouldn't it be nice on the Proposition O items to have the agenda items, which gives the details of how the money's being spent. And if, for instance, like there was only one bid on the fire alarm project that was accepted and the contract awarded prior to the board meeting, it would have been sort of nice to know that at the bond oversight committee meeting, rather than having me bring it up at this meeting. And I mentioned it to President Cartmill at the meeting, and he said he was going to try to find a way with a bond oversight committee, which is our ultimate objective, is to comment on how well the money's being spent. It would be nice if we had an opportunity before the board acted, given the timing of the meetings, to look at the agenda items. And I think it's frankly, a pretty simple request as our committee, given our charge. Hey, can we see the board items in advance? They're not like military secrets in there. You pretty much know what you're going to do. And so that was the context, but Kathleen came here and gave us those agenda items early.
But you've never gotten them, even after the fact. Am I not correct, Mr. Butler?
You're correct, and as I recall, as part of a motion we made, I included in that motion that I wanted to see that backup from now on.
So, Mr. McCurdy, my thing is this. Why are they spending my tax dollars on this, on a PI over an issue like this? And if they're investigating me, who amongst you are they investigating?
Well, I gotta admit, this is the second time I've heard about a PI working for the district. And I don't know why a school district has to have a PI working for them. I don't know if they're investigating me or anybody else, but
This is a little different yet. It is not unusual for HR maybe to have an investigator look in if there's a concern about what an employee does.
well,
The contract with these ESI is basically under the control of Dr. Brandt. These guys work at his thing. He got a $50,000 last year. He overran that by $65,000 without so much as a mother may I. He presented it to the board last month. I spoke at it and I basically told them, what is he doing with this? This is a little paranoid. I said, if he is investigating you, meaning the board, it is totally improper because he relies, I mean, yeah, what he's going to get over on them and have a negotiating ace. I mean, it is totally improper for that. If they were losing tires from the bus barn or steaks out of the cafeterias, they go to the DA or the local jurisdiction.
Yeah,
But to ask for 100,000 this year and blow through 115 last year, it is paranoid
Well,
in the extreme.
You know, you mentioned the employee and such, and I run a defense company, so I have a security clearance, a facility security clearance I call. So we're used to doing these background checks, things like that. You don't need a PI like this to do those. There are companies that do checks on employees for employment purposes. They don't, they are.
The guy has no
They don't
police
do this
powers.
stuff.
He's a Gomer Pyle.
Yeah,
You don't show up at the door of a citizen unannounced. It is
Yeah,
so inappropriate and improper. I mean,
Mr.
it is
Ricker,
a
he
bullying
didn't call me
factor.
and say, may I meet with you? He just showed up.
And
How
Terry-
professional is that, sir?
Terry, the point is this. We're not talking about getting private information on an employee. This is crap that was public and should have been public knowledge as soon as they had it. The only reason to hold it back would be as he juggles what he's going to put on the agenda, depending on who's showing up to vote for it, or if there's going to be a late change. There's no reason for this stuff to go up at the last possible minute to make the minimum time for a public meeting on it, for the agenda publication.
Well,
This is the custom and practice of this district
It is.
and this superintendent, and it's a terrible practice.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask
Yes.
the
Sure.
citizen question? What did they ask you?
What did the private
Yes.
he asked me how I received the information.
What information?
The
What you
backup
presented to
documentation.
us?
Yes, sir. And I said, did you listen to the tape? Because I'm very respectful.
Was that the only thing he asked you?
Yes, and then I said, I'm not understanding this, and he said, I want to be sure, or Dr. Brand wants to be sure you're not getting it from an employee or a board member.
Okay, so
But
the
that was all he
investigator
asked.
said that to you?
Yes, sir. Yes. And
And
according
so-
to HR at our board meeting, she is not using ESI. So that means Dr. Brand alone is using ESI.
Giving him those
Did
kind
the
of
investigator
powers.
say anything else to you, ask you any other questions?
No, sir. He just told me he believed me.
I know Dr. Aldous had been saying that there was a question at the board meeting where, and I don't think Dr. Alt could answer the question. It's here to me, the question was relative to how are we spending the money, and it was really that only Dr. Brand really knows how the money's being spent. That was, by the non-answer, that was the answer of the question of how the money's being spent. I don't, this is, wow.
Mr. Chair, I guess we can either approve or disapprove of it, but unless he's going to bill ESI starting against Prop O, it's sort of out of our court.
Yeah, it is.
As a group.
It is appalling.
It is appalling.
It's appalling.
It does, let me just, so, good point, but it does relate and when we get after an agenda item later, but it does relate to the fact that we need to have more information sooner and more in an organized fashion so we can understand how the money's being spent specifically and not get the feeling, with all due respect to any person, that somehow there's information that we're not getting that we should be getting. I mean, that's been the feeling that I've had since I've been in, and it's not against Dr. Hall or Tom Calhoun, it's the system is such it doesn't appear that we're getting information, as much information on a timely basis for us to do our job. And we have to improve on that in this coming year. Anyway, so,
So dumb guy over here, I mean, this is the stuff that, and quite properly, Ceci puts this together for us, the information we have on, to review on projects. How much more is there given to the board that we don't get, and why am I so dumb? I don't realize the board is getting more information than we do, and why should that happen?
Do you want me to respond to that?
sure.
Yeah,
Well, and I
So the board does not get this level of detail in reports on projects. What the board gets is action items for projects depending on the milestone of the project. At project initiation, they will get an architect, they'll approve the project and the budget, and that'll be done in the M1 report, which you get every month, and we provide it to you, and which is kind of a summary of the financials that you see every month. Then they'll get the architectural engineering contract to begin the design of that contract. And we'll bring that to the board. Once that's approved, then the design begins. Once design is completed, then we'll go out to bid. We'll bid and award the project. And then we'll have a consultant agreement for an inspector, a testing lab, geotech is necessary, and any other, ancillary contracts needed, maybe furniture and equipment orders will come in on the purchase order request. So all of those items together, we track for you in one location, which is, in the project update. And then every month, we give you the items that went to the board the previous month
That's this.
to show you a synopsis of all the items that have come forward. We can certainly pull the items off the website for the board and provide those for you as well that back up each one.
1 month in arrears, though.
But it'll be a month in arrears. Like right now, we're not having a board meeting next Monday, so the board agenda is not put together yet. I was still working on some board agenda items this afternoon, put on the internal server that then goes to Deanne Macedo, who then eventually sends it to the board a week in advance of the board meeting. And then it's posted, so they get it on Monday and it's posted on Friday. That's the normal course of information.
But in the end, and this is the beginning and the end of my issue with this, not just this, but all of this. We're not talking about the formula for Coca-Cola. We are talking about even your draft, and it may be a draft, you stamp draft on it. It is a public document. Virtually everything you put together should be readily accessible to the public, with the exception of personnel issues and actual litigation strategies and negotiations, either labor negotiations during the negotiation and land purchase or sales. Everything else should be readily available to the public. And yet, I will come in with a PRA because I can't just walk in and ask for something. I have to do a PRA, and I can give you paper on paper that says no responsive documents. No responsive documents. I got a letter from an attorney for this district. There has to be a corresponding invoice for it, and I get no responsive documents. And you're not the guy who writes no responsive documents, and in the end, neither is Deanne. But in relatively short order, she's going to have a deposition taken about who asked her, because I did ask in my most recent one, what employee of the district is claiming this privilege or that there is no responsive document. And I'm told, it's not mine to know. So, there will be an accounting and there will be some change either in my attitude towards what I'm expecting or in the district's attitude and what they think they can give. And that's just for the good of the institution.
And what about the change orders, Mr. Marinovich?
Well,
Shouldn't you all see the change orders? That's included in that backup information. shouldn't you see the reason why? You can get a piece of paper with numbers on it, sir, and I have no doubt, Mr. McKierney and Mr. Butler, that you're the ace of all aces. But if you don't have the backup documentation, how do you know? You were a contractor, you had your own firm, you built the courthouse, but you're not given the change order information. But I get it, because I looked for it.
Robert, we're here for you, and then in interest of moving along, I have one
Yeah.
final comment, but Robert, you had something?
I wanted to ask Mr. Calhoun a question. From your statement that you just made, you're telling us that this committee gets everything the board gets, but only later. Is that accurate?
It is.
So the board gets nothing different, nothing more.
Actually, you get more than the board gets. The board does not get this information.
Tom, that's not correct.
Well, it seemed unusual to me.
Wait a minute, I want to time out, the chair wants to speak. Tom, that is not correct. We have not gotten the board items, the detailed board items, the agenda items in advance, okay?
They're available to us.
They're available, and you can say they're available. Let me just tell you what the chair has to do. The chair has to go there on Friday night or Saturday morning, PDF every one individual board item, save the attachments, and put it, and that's what I did for the committee this time, put it all together. I think we need, at minimum, every single agenda item that's on the board, and if you can't give it to us in advance, it ought to be on there Monday morning at 8 o'clock in one PDF of every single agenda item that relates to Prop O with the backup. So we could look at it at least in advance of the meeting. Ideally, and if you weren't paranoid that somehow that something was going to happen, paranoid's not the right term, but give it to us in draft on the Wednesday when we meet before the board meeting. I mean, that is just a simple request.
Well, except that you're asking something that is not within their power to grant.
Well, tell Dr. Brand that we want that done.
I guess our comment is we would request you ask that of the board. That's specifically what we're asking for.
I can certainly do that.
Thank you.
And I can provide the PDFs at the earliest opportunity on all board items that are relative to property.
All in one, not separate, all in one area where you can read it in sequential.
Or we would
That's
prefer to
really
see it at our Wednesday meeting.
At the Wednesday meeting.
Thank you.
Anyway, it's been an issue since the moment Kevin and I got on the committee, so. Okay. Poor Dr. All's been sitting there, poker face. Anyway, we have item number 5, which is an overview of the financial advisor Prop O audit and RFQs. Thank you, Dr. Alt, for taking the time out of your evening, family and all that, to be here, but it's your floor.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this, having this item on the agenda. I suppose, probably just out of process, it would be potentially discussion tonight, maybe action at the next meeting once you hear the discussion. But the purpose for the item, Mr. Marinovich, as the chair, you have a little bit of insight to this. One of the things that you and I have met on a couple times is the process of the request for qualifications process, and using that for service providers that provide financial advisory, bond counsel, audit, and things of that nature. One of the things that I have an interest in doing is ensuring that we have a broad-based selection process that isn't just simply picking firms that have worked with us for a long time, but exploring all of our options and making sure that we have a selection committee or a review committee that ensures that the service providers that we use, that we pay a lot of money to eventually through issuance of bonds and other things, are the right fit for us and are giving us good solid advice. And so in a way to make sure that process, we do have the right fit, the request for qualification process is much like the request for proposal, which you're more familiar with. And in developing those documents, what I'm here for tonight is to ask that the CBOC make an appointment to what I'll call a review committee or a selection committee that would sit with a broader committee. And I'm thinking out loud here, so this is up for some discussion and flexible, but our chief facilities executive and myself, along with a CBOC representative, potentially a community at-large type of representative, representative from potentially the County Office of Education or the county treasurer's office, and then potentially another CBO from an outside district that's familiar with these types of things but doesn't have a real connection to our district. And that would be our, if looking at it from a personnel perspective, that would be our interview committee, much like the way you selected your new members. We'd review the request for qualifications documents. They're drafted now, at least for the financial advisory firm, purely in a draft form, so that once we have this committee set, we could sit down and use that for a framework on what we may want to add into it, what we may want to subtract from the draft document. Once this selection committee has a firm grasp on what we want in the documents, then we'd issue it out to the public, we'd send it to firms, we'd publicize it just like we do a request for a proposal. And then we'd go through the process in the same way that you've gone through the selection for your member. And eventually the outcome from this process would be that we would recommend as a group, as a selection group, in writing, we'd recommend to the board what we see as a pool of qualified vendors. Maybe 1, 2, or 3, hopefully more than one. So if we have different issues going on, we could pick, people with specialized qualifications to maybe like the band issuance. There might be folks that specialize in bands over certificates of participation or whatnot. But at the end of the day, we'd have a transparent process with broad-based involvement that recommends a pool of viable vendors to the governing board, and they, in turn, through their action, would authorize me to be able to select from that pool when we have things like a bond issuance or a ban or a COP come up. And so that's what I'm here for tonight. One, to talk about the concept with the entire group as opposed to just the chair, and ask for, if you have any questions on how the process may work, your feedback on how we may design the process, and then ultimately an appointee from the CBOC to participate. And that's all I have, and turn it over to the chair for.
Oh, the chair has to say the first thing.
You're speaking of this request for qualifications process,
Yes.
or the long-range planning?
Well, not that, but it'd be the same process as what you've seen there, but I'm not speaking of it for the long-range facilities master plan.
You're talking about in general?
Well, the process, the documents like you're reviewing there, but it would be applicable to financial advisors, bond counsel, our auditors, and a variety of service providers. But I'm only speaking to the ones that I
These are the financial people you have to.
Yeah, I supervise, so to speak. They're the things that would come in through my office, where Tom has, for example, a long-range facilities master plan and other RFQs for other types of vendors.
Whoever is selected, if someone is selected from the committee, do they have any sort of restrictions as to confidentiality with respect to the meetings?
Well, what we would have, not insofar as the documentation and how we develop it, that certainly would be up to how you all as a CBOC want to work on how you provide input for the document for the representative. But when we are reviewing particular vendors, we may have some confidentiality issues that we'll have to deal with at the time that we're selecting, depending on the qualifications. I can't think of one off the top of my head. In selecting the CBOC panel members, obviously there's qualifications and things like that that are personnel related that we have to keep confidential. We don't necessarily have those same things in vendors.
Would that member be able to come and speak to this committee as a whole about kind of like input and then come out with an opinion or a view with one person?
Yes, so here's how I would envision the process working, and this is flexible, but this is just my vision, that say Mr. Marinovich was the appointee. He draws a short straw and he's going to work with me and Tom and a variety of other people. We have a draft document, we meet, we go over the documents, you provide the input at the time we discuss it, but then you may, through the operation of this committee, come back and say, I've reviewed the document, here's the kind of issues that I had with it, what kind of feedback would we have from the CDOC so we can carry that back into the process. So it's a representative process, not a secretive process, but an open and pretty broad-based review of this. Where I think we would need to leave that limited is, let's say, for example, on a paper screening, we reviewed 30 financial advisors. And we're going to narrow it down to interview, say, 5. And I'm just making these numbers up. I think it would be wise and prudent for us all that we don't vet those who submitted the RFQs in this venue, but that you have input to the representative to say, this is the kind of firm we're looking for. We want them to have this kind of experience, and we want them to be able to advise us in this way, and we want to be able to vet their references and have assurances that those things were done. That's the way I envision the dialogue, but not necessarily that you would come back, that Mr. Marinovich would come back and say, here's the 5 people that are finalists, what do you guys think of those firms and whatnot?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
We're oversight, we should not really be interviewing these people. In the end, it is up to the district to choose that representative. We're talking about the performance audit and this other. And it would be appropriate for us then to say, we have confidence in this firm or this person, or we don't. But I wouldn't want to see 4 or 5 candidates or firms come in and try to sell us on it, because that is completely out of what we should be looking at.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, remember the process we went through on the RFQ for the performance audit input, and you worked with CalVOC to get information, you shared it with your group, we took that information from the OC as input to the RFQ, placed it in the RFQ. In fact, I think we took everything verbatim, if there wasn't a lot of changes. That was part of the RFQ process to go out. Mr. O'Neill, I would agree that having a BOC member as a part of the selection process gets you in the driver's seat as opposed to the backseat driver's seat.
Right, but the group as a whole should not be putting their imprimatur or making a decision on who it is going to do these things, because it is not our role. It contaminates our role, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, this is like when I worked, when I was paid. This is the kind of, I actually worked on RFQs for financial advisor, underwriters, and, served on the committees and all that stuff. So I know, I can totally, the way Dr. Alt describes the process is very similar to what we do. We don't have them, contact individual. We don't release who's on the evaluation committee and all those kind of things. We keep very, confidential, because you just don't want firms lobbying. Especially given what this district's history back a while back, you really don't want that. So I certainly, I don't know what the rest of the committee, but I definitely have professional experience in doing this, and kind of sounds like what you had. I do have a question on the audits. Are you going to have a separate performance auditor from the financial auditor, or could it be the same firm? I forget where we stood on that.
Yeah, it can be the same firm in many cases. There's recommendations out there, and I say this relatively lightly, right? When you want a legal opinion, you can get a recommendation on just about anything, right? There is value in having the same firm do the entire district audits, whether it's the foundation funds, restricted funds, Propo funds, and general funds, and performance audit, because they learn the flow of the district, and they learn where we might have internal control issues or not throughout the whole district. I would submit that there's value in having the same firm do them all. However, it's not required, and there's recommended practices the other way as well. What we did in this most recent year, because on the short run, me coming in, I engaged the auditors to do both. But that there isn't any set way. I'm not firm on doing that necessarily in the future, and that's something that I'm happy to tease out in the process of doing the RFQs. We might find firms that specialize more through the RFQ process. We might find firms that specialize more in the performance side of things than the financial type of auditing. That may be what we want to do. We want to really target, a specialized group to do the performance audit, and I'm not opposed to that. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that we all know that there's integrity in our audits, whatever they are, performance audit or financial audit, and that we've gone through a process in selecting those who are the strongest fit to analyze the information that we have and the internal controls that we have.
Tom, and then we'll.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, before Dr. Olive got here, Rick Knott had made the decision that we would go for a separate performance audit versus the Propo financial audit. Christy White Consultancy did both the district's general ledger book.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was the financial.
And
sure.
the Propo
Right.
financial audit.
You're right.
So the performance audit was done by Nagro. So, it's been done both ways in the past, and again, the input of the committee would be appropriate to the
Well,
CFO.
I think it's better to have them separate, given the kind of audit that we're doing in the performance audit, because it involves sort of, some of the performance audit items that this committee could consider is really has to do in areas of understanding construction and project management, which really isn't typically within a CPA type financial audit firm. I have a strong interest in the financial advisor part, but I don't know if someone else of you would like to serve on the other committees, or how you want to do. You're looking for a volunteer, multiple volunteers on
I think the committee as a whole has to decide who we think should go there, and I think we need our other 3 members present before we make those kind of decisions.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. When we're talking about our financial, he made a good point, is that on the one hand, you'd like to have a fresh set of eyes look at your books every year, but on the other hand, set of eyes, if they're pure, will understand the cadence of the accounting and the income and outgo. As I recall, and I don't know whether it was a grand jury, but I think it was the county board of ed, was not happy with our walking a different path in the way we did our accounting and the practices. And it seems to me that we were instructed 4 years ago, 5 years ago, to come back into the fold, that the county wanted us there. And as I recall, there was a letter, and it might have been from Huson, responding to that and saying, well, we've made all of these, but there was still some of them left. So my question to you is, are we now employing those practices across the board in our accounting that the county board uses and that jive with all of their systems? So in other words, all of our numbers that denote a code or this or a vendor type or that, they're all now uniform with what the county does?
Yes, so let me say it was before my time, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna speak off the top of my head, but I'll make sure that I can validate, any commitments that I make here. But the county, we were fiscally independent. The county, in their evaluation of our practices, felt that we needed some controls that weren't in place. They did have us come back in entirety, come back in under essentially what I call their supervision, their review for our fiscal reporting. And as a condition of moving back out to fiscal independency, they put some conditions in place. For example, we have to audit 100% of our commercial warrants, and that's just one example of one of the criteria that they put in place. We still maintain all the criteria that they put in place for us to have our fiscal independence. As an example, we audit 100% of the commercial warrants that go out versus having them do that on their end. So we are fiscally independent, but we are doing so under the criteria that they set for us to be able to do that.
What is our budget,
About $350 million
and what is the county
for the
board?
general fund.
What is the county board's budget? If you take what they're handling for the other districts, but their actual budget themselves.
Their own?
Yeah, if you know.
You know, I don't know, but I suspect that it's quite a bit smaller than ours.
But
because they don't
that's
have
sort of where I was going with
Right.
this, is that there isn't necessarily anything sinister in Sweetwater choosing to go its own way, because we are the biggest frog in the pond, and it may make sense. The caveat to that is that everything has to be run on the straight and narrow and according to Hoyle. Otherwise, you then create a temptation.
So I guess, what's your timing on this? Can it wait till the next meeting when we have more members?
It can. And frankly, I expected it might be that I would speak on it tonight, and this would be the first review of it, and then we may have an appointment next month.
Okay.
The only RFQ that I have drafted, and I emphasize it's a draft, it's not completed, it's a draft for purposes of the committee being able to have a framework for a dialogue, is for the financial advisor. It may be by the time you make an appointment that I have the bond council completed as well. I'm in the process of developing that as well. So how it pleases the committee to decide whether you think it's important to have different members sit on each review or potentially the same one. There's value in both ways. And you may have certain specialization within the committee where you feel one member is more adept at reviewing the bond council versus financial advisory. But right now, what I would hope to have is just, at least for the financial, for the next meeting, an appointee for the review of the financial advisor.
And I'm sorry, clarification, I hate to extend this, but you're asking for our participation in the review of the RFQs, not the selection of the individuals.
Actually,
Or is like-
I am proposing that you are involved in the selection as part of a broader-based body, but that the review of the candidate vendors isn't through the whole body, it's through you as a representative of the body with a broader-based group. In the alternative, if that didn't, if that felt a little too close to the fox being in the hen house, and you know, having balance in the committee, I think helps with that concern. But in the alternative, if that's just a little too close to home, what I would request then is that this group review the document and help provide input on what the scope and the criteria, selection criteria would be. So if you look at it, you know, back to the selection of the committee members, when you're setting the criteria of who would sit on the CBOC, that you'd have input on that criteria, and that would be the criteria that goes into the review panel. My thinking and my preference, my own personal preference, is having you involved, because when we have the broader-based committee, then you can represent to a broader constituency that it was a legitimate process, that it was followed, that it's transparent, that the criteria that you helped develop was that which was utilized in selecting the vendors. And then ultimately the latitude that I would have then as the district representatives, once we put 2, 3, 4 vendors, how many ever we decide on, then I'd have the opportunity to flow in and out of those 2 or 3 vendors depending on what the job was, their availability, maybe what their pricing is at the particular time. You know, maybe they have a bench of, maybe it's a financial advisory company that has a bench of financial advisors, but one particular person that they might assign to us, maybe we're not comfortable with them at the time. Maybe we want another a consultant in their group, so we pass on them and go to somebody else that's in the pool. That's the limit to which I would ask for flexibility, is that we appoint 2, 3, 4 vendors, that how many ever comes out of the process, but that we know that the process was applied evenly across them, that the criteria was used, and that we all can represent coming out of that process that it was a process well done, and we're confident in the vendors that we put forward to the board.
And that works up until we know what happened with Alta Vista. So, but I think it's a good way to go forward. I don't think it's too close that one of us would actually be part of the interview and the choosing panel. I think it actually should be one of us, and you can take the temperature or the wishes of the group into it. So And it may be a different person that works with you on drafting the documents, but I think it's a good proposal.
So what we,
Well, I don't, that's not, this isn't an action item though, is it? You want
It can be.
a decision from us?
That's really at the pleasure of the committee. I know that you haven't had time to noodle on it much, other than just the one-on-one discussion that I've had with the chair, so I didn't frankly
All right, I'll
expect
put it
action.
to motion that.
But if you felt comfortable with
You
it,
continue down this
I'd be
path,
happy.
that we do feel comfortable with it, at some point, we'll, amongst ourselves, choose who's going to work with you directly. But I would make a motion that we encourage you to continue down this path.
And that we as a committee at the next meeting actually choose who is going to go down that, who's going to be involved with it.
by each one of the, and it's, so the categories are financial advisor, audit,
and bond counsel,
and bond counsel.
correct.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, for the short run, the only thing that I have queued up in one of the barrels right now is financial advisory. So should we have any, and really your financial advisor and your bond counsel, you really need both of them at the time that you're going to do an issuance. So we know that we probably won't be doing a ban here in the near future, and it's probably a few years before we go back out for more Prop O authorization. So we probably have some time to select them.
Yeah, I think it's a good motion, so I'll second the motion.
First and second, your turn.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, it's 5-0 with Grubb, Strahl, and Guerrero absent.
And Mr. Chair, whenever Dr. Alt comes up with his draft document for review, I can send that out to the committee for input.
Okay.
Back to him.
And I do have the financial advisory document drafted. Again, it's a draft, it's only a framework for discussion. I'm happy to send that to you. You would have it in advance of any of the other committee members because we haven't set that yet. And so what I would say along with the document is the feedback on thoughts on how we comprise the review committee. I want to make sure we keep it a manageable group so we can move through the process pretty well. But I want to also be flexible in making sure that it represents our constituencies well, and we can be sure that it's going to be an effective process. So I'm happy to send that through Tom, and he can send it out to you.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Before we get to the report from the chair, which will be quick, using my iPad that I paid for, the County Office of Education budget is, expenses were 2013-14 estimated to be $278 million. That's both restricted and unrestricted funds. And I'm not sure what the difference is between one of those, other than generic.
I'm sorry, what was the bottom line?
278 million. Okay, chair report. Item number 1, AB 182, which is the capital appreciation bond, as passed, is on the governor's desk. We've had several conference calls with California League of Bond Oversight committees regarding AB 182, and it's hard to say what is going to happen. There's been the media accounts as this is reform and capital appreciation bonds, and look at what good things we're doing. The reality is, when you look at the details of it, that this bill is not really that great. It's gotten emaciated and is a casebook example of how, or likely how, of how money and political influence results in legislation that is less than what it was originally intended to be for. It does, a couple of things it does do. It does limit capital appreciation bonds to the 4-to-1 ratio, which has always been there. It does have more, those bonds do have to be redeemable, they're not, and there's more transparency requirements before a school district issues. They can't do it in the dark of night. However, it does some things on the other end, and I don't want to get too much detail because it's a very complicated bill, but it actually encourages longer-term borrowing by allowing bonds to go up to 40 years. It gives some exemptions and preferential treatment if you issue bond anticipation notes prior to December 31st this year, and you may say a mother may I, you can actually have those exceed the 4-to-1 ratio when you refinance the bands with capital appreciation bonds. And so we're toiling within the California League of Bond Oversight Committees of what to send to the governor about the letter, because we don't want to appear to be, totally against something. But in the aggregate, and I was talking with David before the meeting, this bill, if you look at it and you look at a scenario, could actually result in more bad bonds being issued rather than less, because this 4-to-1 ratio almost becomes the benchmark of encouraging capital appreciation bonds as long as you don't exceed 4.0. That's total debt service relative to the amount borrowed, or like Poway had like 10. So I'll keep you informed via email what's happening with that bill, but it's pretty disgusting actually. How the legislature, it's like making sausage. If you knew how it was, you wouldn't eat sausage. Isn't there some phrase like that?
Quote from Bismarck.
Okay, second item, positions for the committee. There's an open vacancy on the position, on the CBOC for a parent with a student. There's been so far, and the deadline is tomorrow, there's 3 applicants, all female, that have submitted applications for the position, which is good. And once I hear further of what next, I'll let the committee know what next. Third item, tomorrow, this primary relates to the other district I'm working on, but also this one as well. I'm meeting with Jeffrey Olson from the County Treasurer Tax Collector, Assessor's Office, excuse me, to go over how assessed value figures are generated, how they historically relate to statistical information within the district, like home turnover, vacant land, and so on, so I can better understand as chair of this committee and the other one as well, really what will determine future assessed value growth in the region, or in the district, because that's the #1 variable that will dictate how much future borrowing this district can do. And I think it's an important area to really try to understand, because it may not be that the past will foretell the future, because we have a different world post real estate collapse, perhaps, and may not be as optimistic on those projections. So anyway, I'm meeting with that. Speaking of treasurer, tax collector, maybe it's just interesting information, but next week on Thursday, they're supposed to have me data by school district of what the tax rate per 100,000 is for all the bond districts within, or all the school districts, community college districts within the county. In fact, some districts are above the cap of $30 per 100,000 for a district like Sweetwater, where they've had massive declines in assessed value.
Change things.
So that's could be interesting information, just in general. I submitted a trip request for November 15th to go to Calbach in Sacramento, beautiful Sacramento. We'll see where that goes, whether that's put on. I guess, Tom, it's going to go on the agenda, perhaps for September?
I won't go for September because we had to have all our items, our draft items in by today. So.
Well, that was when you thought you were going to have a meeting on Monday.
No, this is for the 23rd. If it was for Monday, it was going to be last week. So all the items have already been processed. So it would be for October, which would still be before the trip.
All right. You know what that means? I'm gonna roll the dice.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
gonna roll the dice, because I'm gonna have to get the flight. I don't believe this.
Nick, if they don't approve it, then I think we as a board need to do something about it, and I don't know whether we go on strike. The education code only requires that we meet once a year. That's sort of cutting our nose off to spite our face. And I think at that point, we go out to the media and simply make our case that they're throttling or diminishing the effectiveness of this group by not allowing you to go to CalBach and reimbursing you. And then we'll go drag out every single trip that this district is spending money on for everybody else that works within it.
Is John McCann gonna be there this coming weekend? Is that the reason why this is being delayed?
Mr. Marinich, I have no idea what the delay is.
It's above his pay grade.
You know, I submitted via email. I don't believe it. I find it impossible to believe that you couldn't docket an item for the 24th, and you don't make it available to the public until 48 hours before. You couldn't have docketed an agenda item with that trip request? Forget it, Tom. I'm not buying it. I just don't buy it. They don't want to have it on that agenda, period. I don't buy it. I used to work in a bureaucracy. You can make it happen if you want to make it happen. They don't want to make it happen. You know, I spend enough damn time on this.
It's not that he doesn't want to make it happen, it's because Brand doesn't want to make it happen.
You know, I mean, really. I mean, God, I spent almost $1,200 on this, of my money. My money. And then, I mean, God, you can't docket an item. You know, I would really want to know whether it's because McCann won't be there. So he can pontificate about how he cares about the kids and I don't. Because he doesn't take any money from the district on this stuff. It's ridiculous, Tom. Really?
He uses their attorneys a lot, though.
Huh?
He uses their attorneys a lot.
God. Anyway, all right. That's it from the chair report. All right. You know, on project updates.
I have a question on your report. So we
Yeah.
will have a rep on the new member selection committee. Do we have any idea when if we picked a rep, do we know when the meeting selection will be, or an idea when it will be, the new members?
It's probably 2 months away by the time it gets to the board, given the speed of things.
Yeah, but the selection committee.
Could I respond, Mr. Marinich?
Sure.
I believe that once the deadline occurs and they go through the documents, that they'll be calling a committee. And I don't know who is the current bond oversight committee member.
Well, it's
that-
John.
It'll be
It's
John.
So,
I think it should still be John.
so Dr. Grubb will be contacted
Yeah.
by HR.
Okay. That's the question.
Yeah. It's John.
And it's usually within a week after they close the applications. Project update.
Okay.
Bonita Vista High School HVAC upgrade, M.A. Stevens construction, they're at 10%. They're up there demoing and getting ready to, get the roof off. I got a award today through deferred maintenance funds. It's not capital funds, but deferred maintenance funds to come in and do the roof at $249,000 for that entire 600 building. 12 classrooms there, and that'll get a new roof on there before the curbs are set, and then when they set the units, they'll be on a new roof. And the roofer will work with the contractor to flash the curbs, so there's no leaking to the roof. And
Tom, will you take questions while, excuse me?
Yeah, go ahead.
While we go along? or would you
Absolutely,
rather have them at the
I'd
end?
rather have them while we go along.
All right, the contract was signed on August 17th, and the notice to proceed was August 19th. Is that a normal time period between the awarding a contract and the notice to proceed? That's the first question. The second question is, if these are HVAC units, and I'm not sure what the timing or reason or rationale, you're having to do these during the summer, or summer, early fall. And would you know, could you have done this earlier, you know, when like now, I don't know if it's affecting the air conditioning. What I'm getting at is, could this have been done earlier where the units could be up and operating better during, when it's hotter than hell now, than having to do it during this time period?
So, could it have been done? Probably. I did it as soon as we knew we had enough money in contingency for other projects to be able to cobble this money together with some CFD money. It's 25% CFD funded, because 25% of the students at Bonita Vista are from CFD areas, and it's 75% Propo funded. We did order the units, and we have the units now at a bonded and secured guarded warehouse, so that the units are available. So as soon as that roof gets flashed over those curbs, the units come out and get set. So I'm hoping that we have some units on that 600 building operational by the end of October. Now, is that going to help this year? Most likely not, but did they have any air conditioning to begin with? They were on a 50-year-old central system that basically died, a 4-pipe system that's, been, put out to pasture, and that's
Hilltop, or is it Bonita Vista?
the reason at Bonita Vista. We're going to go do some abatement in the boiler room and free that room up for redesignation and reuse for storage. So we're in the process of making sure that it works as quickly as possible.
And what was the cost of that versus the track and field design below? Or the total cost, the design and then the total cost?
Well, the track and field, the funding's not there to do the project. It's just the money for the design.
Just the design.
It was about $100,000 to do the full total design of the thing.
You're replacing the
Bleachers,
pipe system with
package
with
units,
a package unit. So
gas pack units on the roof.
there's never a perfect time to do that now that we have year-round school.
Yeah.
You've got to balance forget about balancing the money to do it, but you have to do a tear-off and a new roof if to be prudent. And if you're losing the ability to cool those ones, if you do it another time, you may lose the ability to heat those
Heat 'em,
roofs.
right, yeah.
So there isn't a perfect time unless you get lucky and you can slide it in.
All the tar kettles will be on during the 2-week break coming up the end of
Yeah.
last week of September, first week of October. That's how we do it. And if we couldn't have done it before, because then we would have had to re-roof and sit there and wait for units if we did it in the summer, because the units just came in.
Is this when you piggyback the units on another contract, so you were able to go ahead and
Yes.
purchase them? That's what I thought.
And so that should be completed, all completed at all classroom buildings. There's the classroom building, there's the admin, there's the theater, there's the gym. It should be all complete by before winter break.
Okay.
Track and field design, 75%. CDs are being reviewed. Again, just the design of that money building. And yes, lights are being included in the process, Dr. Brook.
At least the possibility of lights.
Yeah, the conduit and the runs are all in there. Castle Park High School, the Title IX improvements are completed. Just to let you know, the lawyers for the plaintiffs were out, and according to Mr. McLaughlin and our project manager, they were measuring things like the differences in the depth of the shelving between the girls and the boys. They were measuring the openings to the chain link fences, the fabric spacing between the boys and the girls. So we're really looking at everything. So we're making sure that everything's right. And there's the dugouts.
Who's shaking us down on this?
This was a lawsuit that had started in 2006. So it's been going on for a while.
Is Propo money being used for our attorneys to deal with their attorneys on the lawsuit?
I do not know that answer to that question.
It kind of does bring up a question.
I think it's a what I call, help me out, Mr. Carriedo. I think it's a, what do they call it, what kind of lawsuit? Not HR, but it's a
discrimination.
discrimination, yeah, it's basically a discrimination lawsuit, and it's handled through HR in that area.
So who's suing?
There was a plaintiff, parents, a group of parents of softball players that had gone there, they're long gone by now.
They all have their own kids by now.
It was 2006.
Grandkids. Mr. Maravich, I have a question. The desks that are shown, where are those?
That is in the team offices, the girls' coaches' team offices, which is part of the team room. So there's locker rooms in the bigger part of the area, and then there's a smaller area where there's the coach's office, and they have those flat screen TVs so they can watch tape and, you know, go through instructional videos and stuff. And there's then a larger one in the actual team room itself. Ranger Junior High, the health clinic is up to about 50% complete. My understanding, the HVAC unit's going to be placed on Friday when the kids are gone with a crane from the street, and it's going along well.
On Granger, it says that there was an expansion of operation hours from part to full-time.
Yeah, from 20 hours a week to 40, because what they needed to do, Operation Samahan, they provide medical services to our students and their parents in the neighborhood up there in National City. And by getting these upgrades and meeting these requirements, which are 50-50 share between the district and Operation Samahan, they can serve more students, more parents, more, you know, siblings.
Is that a mandated use?
It's not a mandated use. This is Operation Samahan is a MOU agreement that we entered into. It's a community-based health organization that, you know, does a lot of good things for the community. And
No, if it's not a mandated use, then how do you get Prop O funds on that? If we go back to the original ballot language, does it say upgrade the health clinic?
It talks about upgrading HVAC units. I don't specifically know if it said health and you know, welfare.
Well, health, welfare, and
students.
safety,
Yeah.
this is a different thing than.
I don't know if there
compressors
was
and boosters.
specifically a listed project for
Okay.
this specific use, but it generally promotes the health benefits for the students and provides them with, you know, healthy kids show up to school, they learn more.
Well, yeah, except that isn't available to district-wide, it is only available in that one location.
Well, actually, Operation Samahan does have another location. It's across the street from Sweetwater High. And they do...
Are we paying anything on that?
Well, no, they share and they use some of the office space in there with the counselors and with the health professionals that are at the school, and they augment that staff to meet with the students. And I think they have a peer counseling, you know, health organization that meets after school with some kids.
How many bids did you get for that? Oh, go ahead.
What's being built at Granger, if that organization was no longer existing, it would just be used?
Yeah, it would be used as offices for the district, and we could use it as a health office. I mean, it certainly meets, OSHPD criteria for health, and, you know, there's examining rooms and offices and a waiting area. So it could be repurposed.
How many bids did you get for this?
You know, on this one, I can't tell you exactly, but we did get a great bid. I think we got 3 or 4 that I remember. I remember there were like 10 people that walked the job.
Did you actually design this under OSHPD?
It was designed for both DSA and OSHPD review. The filtration system meets OSHPD requirements for filtration.
What about electrical?
Same.
Really? Because I mean, exam rooms, you don't have to do the extra wire and everything else.
Right.
I think you're overbuilding if you're talking about simply a health clinic, because they don't do any procedures.
No, there's no procedures done. It's
So
just,
it didn't really have to go through OSHPD.
well, it had to meet OSHPD clinic requirements to be able to get to a full-time clinic. If it was non-OSHPD, the level to meet OSHPD could have been 20 hours a week is what they were limited to.
clinic is what triggers
Right.
whether you have to go to Oshkosh as opposed to medical offices and
So there is a doctor there. The doctor, you know, may do minor, you know, something, you know, I don't know. There's no operations, I can tell you that. There's no anesthetics given.
right.
But they might, you know, do some removals of, you know, minor problems that people are having or, you know, do something.
All I'm saying is though that it would be nice to truly verify, is it a semantic requirement that you take it through Oshkosh or not? Because it does add significantly to the cost of your electrical and some of these other things.
So we did have to upgrade the panel. The panel had to be upgraded for a couple reasons. You know, power to, you know, the exam rooms and also.
Right, but there's also a double grounding system on the electrical that goes throughout all your outlets and switches.
And it had more power for the unit.
Yeah.
With HEPA filters.
Right.
It says here 6 construction companies in the bid.
Oh, really?
All right, anyway,
Yeah.
we digress.
Thanks.
6 bid, okay. Hilltop High, design on the field is about 50%. Again, no funding for this one. Montgomery High Project 2, we're going vertical. The caissons, there you go, there's the gym. Scaffolding's up, blocks going in. Steel utilities come out of the ground. The steel caissons going into the classroom on the right, the classroom building area. So we're looking good for certainly occupancy next spring, well in front of next school year. Montgomery Project 1, grand opening, there you go, there's cheerleaders, beautiful classrooms, very, very happy new principal, Louis Zoomstein, who came from Alta Vista, is there at Montgomery Mill. And this is the one you toured, you saw that steel in the middle there being placed, I think, during the raising. And there's
With
the
a forklift.
courtyard. National City Middle 2, there's the Artist Conception, the one on the right is the second one. Right now, we're in the middle of demo. Abatement's completed. Demo is underway and will be completed with demo by the break. And then during the break, we'll be doing infrastructure, piping and electrical in the courtyard while school's out of session. We get it buttoned up before the kids get back. Southwest Middle 1B is done. We put the bid package to complete the work. We excused APR from the project. They didn't complete all their work, nor did we think they would well, so we terminated them for convenience.
What's APR?
That was the construction company
See the size of those chairs?
who was doing it. Those chairs were donated to the charter from a donor. There no profit money was used on any of the furnishings or equipments or any of the other site charter specific upgrades. Welding building 2, I was out there the other day. APR is actually doing a better job there. They're about 50% complete. They'll be done by Thanksgiving. Their contract completion date is December. And they're hooking up the vents on the extraction system for welding.
And when you excused APR, was there any debt, any net cost to the district?
No, we just took the money and we're bidding it out to others. We kept their schedule values for the money that they bid on the work and told the company that we were done working with them. They didn't meet their cure notice time. Therefore, we're excusing them. Rather than go through a default, finding a termination for convenience at the time was a lot easier and it freed up the money a lot quicker.
Well, it did, but now you won't have any recourse on the performance bond, if you get payment bond if you needed it,
And
other than the fact that you have them on the hook for some other things.
right. And we did, have the punch list items taken care of. So they cleaned up the stuff that they needed to clean up, and then we've got their fencing product was terrible. fencing that they submitted, the fabric was terrible. I don't know if they were doing it in their own backyard. They tried to self-perform things that probably should have been done by a sub. Sweetwater High site restoration parking lot, been done, and we did the parking lot, and the solar's going in, and we'll get the parking lot finished once the solar's completed next year.
Tom,
Yes, sir.
the sentence, the parking lot portion is being revised to accommodate the solar project.
And meet budget.
What, can you maybe elaborate on?
So we had a design of a parking lot, and the parking lot had lots of nice planters and irrigation and, bumper stops and curbing and stuff. And this is when, we're planning, this parking lot was part of the welding 2 project and at the end of project 1. So we had that project, and it basically was a standalone project. The solar came through, we signed the PPA. We said, let's hold up on the parking lot, let's put the solar in, and let's see where we're at on the budget. Now that we're finishing up the welding, we know how much money we have left in the project. We can make revisions. We've made revisions to it, and now we're aligning the parking spaces to accommodate the solar, so we have the foundations for the solar, and it's in. So Hector Reyes, the designer, has modified the design, and once the solar's done, it'll go out to bid. And we think it's going to save us probably $25,000 to $30,000 from what was in our report.
APR is there again, so,
The demolition, they did well on the demolition. They can demolish things really well.
it's kind of not
They
very
took
well.
out all the old
I noticed
foundations.
that.
Well,
So,
that's a good sign for construction.
Yeah,
So you've had to terminate them at least,
On one of the 3 projects that they've worked on.
and how many projects, I mean, are they a long time?
They're a fairly new entity. The first time they showed up was on this demo contract. They did a good job. It was a small demo contract, about $48,000. They did a great job. So they bid the other one, and they bid it fairly low. We said, great, we got a good price, and then they started trying to perform. Got to a point, they were slow, trying to get school ready.
Is there a process for delisting, or is there?
Sure, there's a cure notice. First of all, you do a contractor cure notice. And notice to cure, you got 10 days to get back to us and let us know how you're going to take care of the schedule. Then, you also copy the bonding company, get their attention. Bonding company is basically giving them the wherewithal to get their work done, because if they don't get a bond, they don't get work. Then you go to them and say, listen, this isn't working out, guys. We're going to terminate you, and you get 2 choices. Termination for default, which becomes difficult because people want to fight that. They don't ever want to be defaulted. Or termination for convenience of the government. Move aside, let us get in there, let us get it somebody else that can finish the job to do it. And that way, we don't have to go through the legal hassle. We don't hold the job up. We don't hold the bonding company. Because then the bonding company steps in, and it's been my experience that the bonding company hires the same company back to finish the job. They couldn't do it in the first place. It's difficult at that level.
If the company simply has a capital problem or cash flow problem, and they have adequate supervision and they know it, that's the best solution for everybody. If they're simply incompetent, it's a different story.
I think this was above their level of expertise on this project. I think at the welding shop, the work level at the welding shop is within their level of expertise, because the buildings, pretty much fit out. It's just finish up work. Crack filling, moving equipment, installing equipment, utilities. The stadium should be ready by October 11th, ribbon cutting around 5 p.m. or so, and then a football game thereafter. You're all invited to attend. There'll be a ribbon cutting. NFL player will be there because the NFL gave a $200,000 grant to this project. The city will be there. They gave a block grant, $200,000 for this project.
What time would that be?
About 5 p.m. I'll get the invite out to everybody once it's official.
NFL player, huh? Who's that?
Probably somebody cut from the Chargers after last game.
Yeah, exactly.
There's all kinds of them around, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Maybe?
Most of what the college education they can't use.
Could be. Fire alarm upgrades is going well, 20% complete at the 3 sites. We'll get a lot more done and be able to cut over a lot of systems during the break in the next 2 weeks when it comes up. And then we'll have 2 more fire alarms going out to bid. I want to give you guys a heads up at Chula Vista High and Southwest Middle. TMAD is our contractor that we're using because they were the electrical sub to BCA and we're not using BCA anymore. So they'll be doing the bidding and construction administration and oversight on the contract. Total together, both contracts, around $600,000. I think what I told Mr. Marinovich. So $600,000 we're expecting. We've got about $1.1 million left in fire alarm projects at this time. And we'll probably be going out to bid with some more in the spring, looking at probably Sweetwater High. It's a large one and it may go over the remaining amount, so I'll be using potentially contingency for that.
Tom, when I was reading the agenda item on the fire alarm upgrade that was on the last agenda, it indicated that there was one bid.
There wasn't.
And that one bid, and that contract was awarded prior to the board meeting, and the board ratified the contract last board meeting. And it was, as I recall, $1.2 million.
Right, it was 3 sites. It was at, let's see.
Did you let that in 3 contracts or 1 contract?
Let it as one contract. It was a combined contract at 3 sites. So, and, let's see who we had.
Contractor large enough to man 3 sites at once?
This one, yeah, firm is one of the largest fire alarm companies in San Diego County.
Is there, I mean, did you kind of, I mean, because when you see the dollar amount of the contract, or at least when I see it, and I know it is a specialized area, so you wouldn't expect every Tom, Dick, and Harry to be able to qualify to have the expertise, but one bid is, for that large a contract to accept and award it, I don't know, did that cause any pause by staff or the district, that there was not at least a second or third bidder on that?
Well, I can tell you that, and I'm just looking at, you know, what my estimates were for construction. It didn't give me pause because, you know, the one site alone at Hilltop High was $910,000 estimate for the work.
No, that wasn't my question was, why didn't you get more bidders?
You know, I can't tell you. We sent it out to everybody that does this work, time alarm, you know, Sonatrol, Standard Electronics, you know, all the big firms that do this work, whether they were busy, whether they didn't want to bite off one that was this big at the time, I have no idea. But the bid was well within the estimate.
I understand that. As a matter of internal policy, or when you have a contract that large, it sounds like, do you go out and find out why you didn't get more bids? I mean that's.
We talked to one firm that said if we would have bid it a week later, they would have bid it, but they were busy putting another bid together.
Huh?
And it costs the firm a lot of money to put together bids on this. They have a finite number of estimators. If their bid board is full, they can't fit something like that in. So as Tom said, next week they would have been able to take it. But if you've got 3 jobs and the people to put 2 jobs together, you don't do these for fun. You do these to truly try and win.
So the final estimate of the 3 jobs was over $2 million by the engineer.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think we got a pretty good price, you know, and that's why we awarded it. You know, if I was at $2 million, I probably wouldn't have awarded it. Probably would have waited and rebid it, but, you know, it's.
Okay.
The other consideration was the plans, as we explained last time. Plans were expiring.
Reaching their sell-by
We're on a time loop, you had a time limit.
Time limit on the plans, correct. So we are going to go out to bid for another 2 sites, and the total estimate on the 2 sites is around $600,000. smaller project, we'll get more bids. PPA 2, Phase 2 at 17 sites. I can tell you that we have 2 sites energized. Castle Park Middle is, all the panels are up, but it's not connected. They'll be ditch witching it next week after the Secretary of Education leaves. That's been an interesting thing, getting ready for his visit. Maintenance guys are out there painting the curves and making the place look good.
Speaking of that, I went out there and actually looked at it. Boy, I don't know where you found all those banners, Duke and all those teams.
Yeah, Bobby, that's a college-ready push at Castle Park, and, you know, they have what they call Promise Neighborhood Grant for that whole catchment area, which includes not only Castle Park Middle, but Castle Park High, Hilltop High, and Hilltop Middle. So that whole area is, you know, really going to get a lot of social services, a lot of mentoring, a lot of people encouraging kids to, you know, go to college and study hard and do the right thing. So that's...
So as far as Prop O money, and I just want to make sure I got this right, because you and I talked about it at our meeting on Monday, that the only Prop O money that's being spent on the Castle Park Middle School enhancements for the Secretary's visit is some money advance or some seating or bench
Yeah,
that will eventually be reimbursed.
by the contractor.
So the painting, how's the painting being paid for and all that?
Deferred maintenance. We have deferred maintenance funds.
I'm sorry,
Deferred.
the seating,
Yeah, so the project included us putting benches in, you know, replacing it, you know, benches that were, you know, had to be cut out to be able to put the solar arrays in. The contractor has promised to fund that as part of the PPA. So benches that they ordered aren't here on time.
okay.
So to make sure that 1,000 people have a place to sit, rental was made, and then we're gonna have that reimbursed by the contractor.
On the PPA?
Yeah.
I thought that was going in the parking lot.
No, at Castle Park Middle, it's in the quad area.
Okay, so they're using it as a shade structure?
Shade structure, because they had a non-DSA
Fair enough.
one that was terrible. And then another area there along Quintard, there's an array that's outside the foul line of the baseball fields, right along the street.
All right, I'm done.
All right,
Are we gonna be invited to meet the secretary?
Absolutely, anybody that wants to come can come. You know, Friday morning, be there about 8:30, and
This Friday?
yeah, Friday the 13th, my lucky day.
Yeah.
really good to meet. Can we talk to him?
As long as you don't say a word to me about it.
You can talk to them all you want, as long as you can get past the Secret Service agents.
Yeah.
It's easy to get.
Have you ever met a secretary of the cabinet before? They travel with quite the entourage.
Yeah, we got a whole bus full of forward people and
Oh, yeah.
everything else.
They came out August 8th to do a pre-review of the site, to even see if they were going to come. Then the rest of the sites are going to start the end of September, that'll be done. Prop O closeout, Montgomery High, interim housing removal and basketball courts, that's been closed and certified, yay. Need more of those. And that's it, and we moved a bunch of portables out of Montgomery Middle. Once we got that new building open, so we're not paying rent on any of those new ones. And my direction to staff has been, anything we're paying rent on, get it off the site as soon as you open up the new buildings, because the site will get used to the extra space and start using it for other purposes.
Yeah, that's one of those physics things.
Yeah, nature pours a vacuum. All right, so now we'll go to the other one, which is, I think, the financials. The summary. Just a couple notes up top of the adjustments we did on the August board. Just to remind you, we did add about 1.35 million in QZAB reimbursements, qualified zone academy bond financing. It was reimbursing Prop O for work that had been done previously before we get the funding for the QZABs. And that was used at Hilltop High Project 1, Title IX Castle Park High, Program Project Management, paying the district staff salary that manages the program, and then some, what was left over went into contingency. Contingency's now just above 5%, which is where it should be until the need for fire alarms. I'm sorry, the August, as you can see, the July was at about $6.7 million in WIP, work in place, and that's, ever since I've been here, the highest. I thought June was high. We really pushed a lot of work through. A lot of that is due to the big projects, National, City, Middle, and especially Montgomery High, starting to get traction, go vertical on the construction curve. But we dropped back off to 1.5 in August because guess what, kids are back in school and we're not doing all those projects that we get done in the summertime. Here's the, what I call the Prop O version of the M1. And if you got any...
Page 2.
Okay, page 2, I'm looking at that right
Yeah.
now.
The track and field at Sweetwater Union is showing a potential savings of $1 million on a project that was about $2 million, and cost to date is 47%. Kind of looks like that's almost finished, and it was cut in half for
Sweetwater High,
track and field.
track and field. What's happened is the prologue, I'm not showing a savings, I'm actually showing a deficit. And the deficit has been taken care of because this is lagging, the prologue is lagging the report on the board where we got the increase. If you look at the M1 report that we have on the board, the project's really about $3 million now. There was a $915,000 budget adjustment done back, I believe, before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay,
I'm confused.
yeah.
So,
I'm really confused.
so the Sweetwater High, this is prologue, okay?
Okay.
Prologue meaning.
Prologue being our project management system,
Yeah.
Okay.
and True Course,
Yeah.
which
True
is our
Course your
district
other
financial system.
Your other system. Yeah.
So the district has to close its books every year, and even though we in the project side work in multi-year funding and spend money across fiscal years, the financial side has to look at the project, take the snapshot, close it, pay all the invoices that were incurred during that fiscal year, close POs, reopen POs at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then have any budget adjustments that were done in that very time, they have to load up into the True Course. We can't load them up in Prologue until they're loaded up in True Course, because that's the control system we got, because the district books are on True Course. Our project management aren't the official records of the district. So when I go back and ask Dr. Alt, hey, can your guys load up my projects? They're busy with year-end closeout. So now that they're through year-end closeout, and they're doing the first interim report final, then I can get those things loaded up. We try to reconcile Prologue and True Course on a monthly basis. It's usually pretty good during the year, but at the end and beginning of the fiscal year, it's a little bit dicey.
But I think there's curious,
I understand that, yeah.
I'm still confused though.
Okay.
you have a $2.5 million committed budget,
Correct.
2.1 and a half. Cost to date is $1 million, 47% completed. Difference, the cost to complete is $124,000. Hence, you get something in red in parentheses under potential savings or overage. But you're saying that this isn't a $2.5 million committed, it's been bumped to
It's
$3
been
million.
bumped up more than that. There's more than that committed, and there's more budget available than the current budget is about more like 3.1.
I mean, has the scope expanded, or was this soils problem?
Well, there was
Where did it come from?
the scope got expanded when the project was found that the dirt that needed to be moved had a 3.5 differential from one end of the field to the
Yeah,
other. lights out of the way to get the 8 lanes of track in, to get the CIF, qualified track.
And we didn't know that going into it? I mean, it's a design thing.
It is a design thing. And so during that, those occurred during the design. And that's where the budgets, when they awarded the project back in May.
Okay.
And so when they awarded the project at the same time, the budget was increased.
Right, but,
Yeah,
but look, we paid good money for the design, and presumably we used a designer who knows how to do these things. Did we come in after the fact and say, by the way, we're gonna do this to CIF standards? Or was that
No,
always?
that was part of the requirement.
Okay, so
The requirement was the CIF.
who did the buildability study on this or analysis?
The project manager.
SGI or?
No. Our project manager. One of our newer guys,
Okay.
Trent Carr.
And he missed it?
He didn't miss it. He found it, and it was in the estimate. And the district, what we do is we bid it out on the estimate that the architect gives us. If there's a budget adjustment that needs to be done, after bid time, we do the budget adjustment one time. So we're not doing incremental budget adjustments along the way. We go to the board one time, we say, here was the estimate, here was the bid, current budget is not adequate to cover that. Here's a request for use of project contingency, program contingency, to add to this project to be able to cover this project.
No, I understand that part of it, but when you're talking about a change order in 6 figures,
No, there's no change order in 6 figures. This was the original award.
okay, so the shortcoming was in the engineer's estimate.
Well, between the engineer's estimate and the bid, there was a bust. And we knew that the estimate was above our budget. We knew we were going to go to the board and ask for an increase. We didn't know how much. Instead of going and asking for an increase twice, you ask once, you go to the board with the award and say, the budget is 2.1, it needs to be 3.0.
How many bids did you get on this?
I'll have to go back and check, but
Well, I mean, this was a
Byron Davy was the low apparent bidder. There's probably 4 or 5.
okay, but I'm fine, that proves it out, and I'm comfortable with it. If this was design build or something else, I'd be a little less comfortable with it for negotiating.
It wasn't designed built.
Okay,
And so, committed to date should be much higher than that.
fair enough.
yeah. And I understand that on the left side in terms of the budget and what we think it's gonna cost. But why do we only reflect 124K to complete, which is what's driving that 47% and driving the right-hand column to make it look like we're gonna make a lot of money?
We're not, because cost to date, again, because of lag with our financial system being closed out, the cost to date is probably $2.5 million at this point, not $1
Okay,
million.
I understand.
Okay, assuming that that's
So
all
we're,
accurate,
so we're in lag.
and that's all true, then how do we know all these other numbers are correct? Those are wrong.
So those 2 are wrong because that budget adjustment was made. The rest of them had no budget adjustments made. And I know for a fact that, Hilltop High, going down the list of the projects that were done are in pretty good shape. That one, because the project, budget was just recently done, and it was a major one, it was, about a third of the price of the project. So it affected that project a lot.
Well, I think that my concern or my thoughts are, it's important that these numbers be correct,
Understand?
so that we can look at them and say, okay, what you're saying is accurate, what you're saying is true, things are going fine, we lost a little here, we made a little here. But these, is this the Sweetwater track, is that the only one where there's a huge mistake? Because that's a mistake.
And I won't,
It's showing, you're telling us it's cost about $1 million more than it was supposed to, but nowhere on these figures does it show that.
Because this, again, this report is lagging the true course
But yeah,
authorization.
there's two issues we're talking about here, I think. One is, how much do we really need to do this project? But this accounting thing is the other issue, and I still don't understand why it says only 124K is cost. Is that because of putting things in from one system to another?
Well, the cost to complete, comes based on what the cost to date is,
You're right.
minus the difference in the budget. And again, the cost to date is a lot higher because the year-end closing, this is a project that most of the expenditures were done between June and July. So I would say 70%, and those are the expenditures that are caught in the year-end closeout. And so until I go through with our Propo cost accountant manager, Mary Jo Hughes, and sit down with her and find out, why aren't you carrying the costs here, I won't know.
Well, I guess the question that I
So
would
everything on
have.
page 14 is not accurate.
So if we go to page 14, and we look at,
It shows the same number.
yeah, and that's reflective within the prologue system, and you're right, these are not accurate.
Okay, I got a question. Sure. This is the financial summary that appeared in last year's annual report. That's not from Prologue, correct?
That,
It's the one the board gets that
It's
we
one
don't
board.
get.
that's the M1.
Okay, that's the amendment, okay. And this one, this is in June 30th of 2012. It showed the revised budget for Sweetwater as 3.1 million, which is what you're telling me it is now.
Right, that's what it is.
Yeah, but this is almost a year later. How come this doesn't reflect that? This is a year later. We're not talking a month or two. We're talking a year later, and this still doesn't show that revised budget.
Is that's not the new one?
No, this is the
not
one
the
from
new
2012 that showed that 3.1 as a revised budget for Sweetwater. So I don't understand. And it also shows, like Hilltop High, it shows the revised budget is 24,858, but this, the most recent one, is showing a much lesser number. I don't understand that.
So
If we knew the revised budget way back here in June was 3.1, why isn't it showing this in September of 13? On Prologue.
So I'm going back and looking at,
That's the M1 that was in the
old one, right?
that was in our annual report last year.
Right.
And if you look at the Sweetwater synthetic track and field, it shows original budget 2.2, and then it shows revised budget 3.1. Well, if we knew it back then, how come Prologue has still not picked it up?
Mr. Brother, I'll have to go back and check the prologue manager.
See, this takes me back 3 years to when SGI was here. That was the first thing when I came in, is I couldn't make the numbers jive. They give me one report that said one thing and one report that said something else, and it made no sense to me. And that's really confusing when you're trying to
Right.
And
to
I
follow
would
the
make-
numbers.
I would make a suggestion. For our purposes, we don't really care what the district does with how they account for their annual or their quarterlies. You put it in Prologue if that's your choice, or you put it in Quicken if
Right.
that's your choice.
No,
But you keep it there and you update. And if you start from that, then we have, a solid footing to go from. But if you're bouncing back and forth, that's how you end up with a fairly embarrassing
Yeah,
glitch here, because
yeah, that
you're
is
talking
a
about
bad
a third
bust.
of your dollars
Aren't shown.
aren't shown, and they're shown going back a year previous. So this doesn't reflect well on the system.
Well, yeah, and like, on this one, it's showing our total available funding is 263 million, which I've kind of been led to believe that's what we're working from all
Right.
along. Prologue showing we've got a committed budget of 281 million. Where's that coming from?
So if you go into the most recent M1, with all the bands and the QZABs that we've done since that one, we're up to over 303 million.
So it's the bands and everything that
Yeah,
have made this increase that much.
the bands have increased it by 37 million, and then the QZAB, we got over $2 million from that.
But how can you count the band money in this? Because the band money is separate funds from Prop O.
No, the band money is Prop O dollars. Be clear about it, because it's gonna get repaid with Prop O dollars, so I'm treating it like Prop O dollars. And so I gotta,
As I remember the prospectus on it, it shows Prop O as the expected, but it really shows it as the districts to pay,
correct, but it's,
beginning and end of the day.
Mr. O'Neill, that's why it's called a bond anticipation note, because
I understand that.
it's in front of a note. I'm treating it as a Prop O money. Our accountants are tracking it in another fund, but from a project perspective, I'm treating it just like Prop O money.
Okay, I mean, fair enough, because you're using the Prop O projects, but the reality is, if we did another dip, you may not have that money in 5 years, as unlikely as it may seem today. Okay.
Yeah. Can I request that we start seeing the M1 in addition to these other?
Oh,
ones?
absolutely.
Just so we can,
Yeah,
look the current M1?
I'll bring you the current
Yeah,
one.
okay, thank you. That would make life a lot easier.
Absolutely.
What time are you going to finish up?
Soon. All right,
Because I want to get everything about.
yeah, Cal, in the interest of time, let's go through this quickly, Tom.
Chula Vista High, we're still finishing up some minor projects there, on some fencing and softball field, baseball field, parking lot. But for the most part, that project is over.
Why don't we just have him prove up all the numbers on this before we go through the exercise of looking for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just do a reconciliation between prologue in the next week and send it out to all the members.
Okay.
Because I think now that they're done with year end, they can breathe again, so I'll be able to get that done.
All right, good.
So you want to kind of skip the financials for this time? And we'll
Yes.
So we do that.
I'll get the revised one out to you guys
We have a couple other items.
by next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
And then the C item is board item recap. You've already seen that. This isn't detail. Next time, I'll do a detail of all the items behind this. This will be like the overview, and then we'll do one PDF, which will include all the items that are here.
Tom?
And then I'll make the request
To have the backup.
to have the backup for the upcoming meeting
Thank you.
presented.
All right, at minimum, por favor, please, pretty please, on the Monday, before the, or when it's a, one PDF on our Propo website with all the board items that are Propo related, all in one place.
When it gets released by the board. If I can't get it to you in front of
I mean, not,
it. If I could do it on Friday, how about if I do it on Friday night for you?
I'd like to have it by our meeting on Wednesday if the board will allow that.
Understand.
but at minimum, even if they don't,
Right,
I mean, so we don't have to individually hunt and peck.
I understood. So we'll put that on the log, Ceci.
I can't even imagine a rationale that they could come up with for why they wouldn't want us to see it either contemporaneously or even before then. I don't even know how they would be able to verbalize a reason that they need to keep this secret.
The only rationale I've been given, not just this board, but other boards, is that they don't release it until 72 hours prior because the board members may want to make some changes, they may want to pull an item, they may want to adjust something or say something, and until they have a chance to review the board items and make those discussions,
Well,
it's not
look,
released to the
anybody
public.
can pull the item, and you don't have to be a board member, but the board member isn't going to make any changes to the Prop O expenditures.
I understand.
I mean, I can understand it for some of the other alphabet soup that they go through, but there really is no, they can't change it. Anybody can pull it, either pull it for discussion or remove it from the agenda and say it's been pulled into discussion. I mean, there is no legitimate rationale that you can vocalize, other than it's the custom and practice to play hide the bacon.
And I'll ask the question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
ask it
And the
nicely.
chair will mention it at his report.
And I did want to update on the Long Range Facilities Master Plan. It's in the budget right now on the M1 report, in the program at $300,000. We had 24 respondents show up to the pre-proposal meeting. I had shared this, I think with Mr. Marinovich, I think he shared it with the rest of you, the draft. We're expecting, I'm hoping, half a dozen or so good proposals to come in on October 3rd. Our anticipation, like Dr. Alt said, is to have someone from the Bond Oversight Committee participate in the selection process. It's a 3-step selection process that I'm envisioning. One step is the project managers. I got 5 of them. They've all been around the block about 200 times each. Have them review it, look at them, rate them, and that'll be one cut. The ones that float to the top, wherever the break point is, the top 2 or 3, wherever that is, maybe 4, would come for a interview. The interview would include someone from the Bond Oversight Committee, someone from Southwest College, like John Brown, who just went through a master planning exercise there, someone, a principal at a high school that, you know, has gone through major renovations, or is in need of major renovations, someone, principal maybe from a middle school, someone from the industry, government, who does planning, and then, you know, some.
Director of planning or somebody like that who does the same thing.
So that would be my, and I'm envisioning the interviews to occur sometime around mid to end of October, and have, and the 3rd phase would be, once you get the final, you know, interview, and you get all points assigned, so 100 points possible for the paper screen, 100 points possible for the interview, sum them up, and then you open up the price proposals and you use a quality-based factor for the price. So in other words, even if you have a high price and you've got like lots of points, you're not penalized. If you've got a very low price but you don't have a lot of quality points, maybe you don't get the job. You know? So it's not just strictly on price, maybe 50% based on price.
The interviews are mid to late October, so we would need to make a decision as to the person very quickly.
By next meeting, I would assume by next meeting we would need to have somebody identified.
All right,
Next.
next.
I think that would be,
We're on it like a, you know what, on a you know what.
The annual report.
you got the annual report. There's a lot of things that need to be changed in it. Obviously, it's there for you to cut, paste, give Ceci feedback on, write your letter, and we're going to drop in the financials from Mary Jo
Okay. All right.
as soon as she can breathe. Subcommittees.
Asset map, well, I don't have really anything. David and I talked about the annual report, which just went over. Best practices, well, we have 2 apps in here. Probably, we do need to decide what we're gonna do now that we got, out of the goodness of their heart, the district gave us the grand jury transcripts of how we're gonna, what the next step would be in terms of dealing with that information. But absent not having Dr. Gruber, Edgar here, I think probably want to table that right now. Nothing finance, or I'm sorry, David didn't really meet on that. But asset management, Kevin, you have something on that?
Well, yes, and Nick and I discussed it, but as part of reviewing the costs or expenses, as we saw the legal expenses, the Propo went up, and that's normal as the higher volume of construction, the higher likelihood that you're going to have disagreements. But I wanted to take a look at it and see, are we using the right hammer for the right size nail? And I thought also, we should know whether we're talking about construction defect litigation, or whether they're delay claims, or whether they're change order disputes, because on some of those things, it'll help us gauge whether or not our A&E is doing a good job, or our project management team is doing a good job. The DT, or the construction defect, is a little bit different, but and I've been doing this for 20-some years, this construction defect litigation. You don't, in my opinion, the district who's not making any money on this, they're simply looking to be made whole on any litigation. They would be better served to go to a defense firm than to a plaintiff attorney. A plaintiff attorney is known to puff things up and hype it up, and their generally fee rate is much higher. The defense firms are working for the insurance industry, and their billing rates for principal can be as much as $200 an hour difference, in my experience. So what I asked, I took it by myself, did a PRA, and surprise of surprises, I'm told that it's attorney-client work, and it's a privilege. Now, I sent a letter back to the district naming 4 court cases that say the invoices are not privileged, and as long as you cannot glean a trial strategy from the notations, they can't. So right now the district and I are loggerheads on it personally, but I would like this group to ask for a basic matrix that says what the name of the firm is, what the issue they are doing, construction defect, Montgomery High School, something like that, or whatever it might be. The firm name, the bill rate, and the issue. And it will give us a chance to look at where is our money going, and are we using the right hammer for the right nail? Because we don't choose it. We all know that the superintendent chooses who the attorney is. Tom, you don't get to choose the attorney, do you?
I do.
Do you?
For construction-related issues.
Okay, very good. But
I know some good ones.
yeah, as do I. But I'm not
But
suggesting
they
anything.
have to be on our bench for me to choose them.
And I understand that too. And I've gone out there and told them. But I truly believe that if you look at a defense firm instead of a plaintiff firm, you're going to get a much better rate. And the other thing is that the industry knows that a defense attorney is real, and they're more likely to settle and go with it rather than doing this 1- and 2-year dance, playing with the numbers. So I think would be better served. Now, I don't know what the numbers are, and it might not even be worth the conversation, but I'd like to see the numbers, and it's certainly within our purview.
And I can get vendor numbers and equate vendor numbers to things and get breakdowns on the projects that.
Yeah, okay, I mean, that's fine.
I mean, I'm not going to make Ceci go through, 200 invoices. But what I can do is I can get a summary of who the people are, how much they're paid per hour for, principal and a regular attorney, and I can get, projects they've been working on.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all I was looking for at the beginning. But,
And can you get the money spent by project?
Money spent by project, I don't know.
when you engage these guys, do not ask them for a budget up to trial. That would be good to know too. So we know
And
how much we've spent, where our budget is to trial, and that's like asking how long is a piece of string, because you really don't know how it plays out in between. But get an idea of who it is. But I'd like to see the firm names too.
Do you need a motion, or you want to do a motion?
Let's give them a motion, because my
Why don't
experience
you make the
hasn't been
motion,
good.
Mr.
Well,
O'Neill?
I would like this group to make a motion or to support a report and briefing on the who, what, when, and how much we are spending of Prop O funds on these projects.
For legal.
For legal.
Yes.
Which would include the name of the firm, the issue of their contract, issues of their contract and the billing rate.
Well, also the their estimated cost up to trial and the amount paid to date. So it's six things, and that'll give us a good snapshot of where we are and what we're spending, and what we're spending it for. Excuse me.
Can you repeat those 6 things again? So
The
we get it
name-
right, I wanna get it right.
The name of the
Says you
firm,
got it?
Firm, bill rate, issue, how much has been spent,
and the estimate.
and the
Up to
estimate of
trial.
the trial.
Okay, great.
As long as she's got it.
I'll second. All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? None?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Just a quick question, Tom,
Yes, Mr. Grady?
he's asking for this information. At the present time, in your report of finances, does the amount spent on legal go into that information?
It's not a line item
It's
that's
not
on,
delineated.
because it's not a project, it basically comes out of the program contingency.
So if you spent $1 million on a project and you spent $100,000 on legal on that project, where is that gonna show? Anywhere?
It won't show in the actual project budget, it'll show in the program legal fees.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a line
legal
item for
fees
legal
will have
fees.
its own
So
code number.
I could do a line item for legal fees on the report.
Yeah, and I mean, last month you did show us
Yeah,
where it had gone up, and as you would expect it to.
Well, it actually went down last year.
Well, but it starts slow, it comes up, it drops.
Right.
You know, it's title along with your project.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up, ladies and gents. Information log we got here, thank you for listening to us. We have it in our packet here. Tom delivered the transcripts. You wanna go through this, Tom, or
You can certainly go through, I'll put
is
it
there
up on
anything
the
we
board.
gotta know, then any hidden things? There've been fire alarm tests, we're in compliance. That was requested by Edgar.
And if you saw the paper, some of the good news in the paper that our district and I believe it was Grossmont are the only 2 districts that have actual documentation of those reports.
Well, that's because
Because you're on the bond oversight committee for both.
representative of both.
This is, I like how you've done this, Tom, it's very helpful.
Well,
Nice and simple.
yeah, it's like an RFI log.
Yeah, exactly.
It keeps track of what you're looking for.
And see, you slap draft on it, and everybody knows that, which gives you a chance to, it gives you wiggle room.
So, Ceci, I'm missing something. I don't know, I can't find the folder anymore, where this stuff is. Where's it
Go
at?
to the website and find it, but
We almost done?
He can't find something he wants to show us.
Oh.
it's all, you can delete them, and drop them, right? Or you can hold it and see service. And then, if it talks, before it's just.
No, I just wanted to show it to Mrs. Cherish, I think she wanted to say.
Oh, yeah, that's great. So the penultimate one is a little harder to come up with, I think, yes?
What's that?
Second from the bottom, the penultimate one.
That was the one you said.
Yeah.
The way you want to see it, let me know.
Yeah, okay.
I'll keep showing it to you
Fair
until I
enough.
get it right.
Okay. No committee reports, right? We need to schedule the next meeting.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think I just got steamrolled.
Oh, I thought we were done. Trying to remember saying, I want to get out of here.
Hey, no.
All right, never
I
mind.
do have an item I want to bring up.
Oh, okay.
The unfortunate thing is that it's probably not directly related to this, but, well, here I go. In another life, I do a volunteer project that takes refurbished computers and puts them in classrooms or in labs. And for schools. So the thing that directly relates to Sweetwater and maybe indirectly to Prop O, but bear with me on this, is we were all set to give a bunch to Otay Ranch. Okay, it's time to name names, right? And the teacher was all ready for them and was going to teach a new course based on computers and so forth. And the administration decided they didn't want the computers after all because they didn't have the right desks and they would have had to gotten new desks and it was just too much trouble. And I and my volunteers were somewhat miffed. So the first part is McCurney's upset and he's miffed and he just said that. The second part is that if you do know of schools that would like computers that are refurbished, that they're to be used in the classroom, let me know. I get an allotment from the Futures Foundation, so many a year, and I bring them to schools pretty much without prejudice. I've given them to a Catholic school, I've given them to a Lutheran school, I've given them to a Muslim school, I've given them to a Jewish school, and I've given them all kinds of private school, public schools as well. So
What numbers are you talking about?
I usually usually I have an allotment of around 25 a quarter. And just to know the common thing right now is to put them in labs. They like people in lab. I have a group of volunteers. We come in, we set them up. They come with the Windows 7 installed on them and with a Office reader so that you can read. You don't have the Office program, but you can open Windows. And if there's any other programs. The people who come with me are IT kind of people, so we're pretty good.
Mr. Rich, I can get Mr. McCurney in touch with David D'Amico.
I know Dave well.
So he would probably, he's the director of Ed Tech.
Yeah, I know, and I was contemplating giving him a call.
He was
about
probably
this.
the best guy that I could think of
Yeah.
to facilitate a smoother
Yeah,
transition.
I probably should talk to him about this thing at Otay.
Because he can pave the way for you instead of just talking to a teacher.
Kind of looking at a gift horse in the mouth, but,
Yeah.
where do you get your computers?
They are refurbished by the Futures Foundation, which is a county-sponsored vocational training and Futures Foundation is part funded by San Diego State, partly funded by the county. The computers themselves come from the county refresh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Because
researching
I don't know if
that.
you've seen it, but if you go on the DOD website, you can get, right here up in Los Angeles, you can get laptops and other computers by the pallet on
Yeah.
the strap value. Now, laptops, you're gonna end up, most of them have the hard drives removed, but you also have to get batteries on laptops, but you can buy towers literally like ammo cans. I mean,
Yeah, I-
400 at a time is how they go.
DRMO.
Well, it's not
DRMO,
it's government liquidators now, but
I know. The good news, the good thing about these machines is they've all been refurbished by the
Yeah.
Futures Foundation, and so they generally work. I mean, the ones go bad every now and then. They come with flat panel screens, 70-inch flat panel screens, and they're about a generation, if you will, a couple behind what you might buy. And by the way, anybody who has a non-profit, they can go to the Futures Foundation and request computers too. Because their mission in life is to give computers to nonprofits. I work the schools for them, but they do network services and they provide computers to nonprofits as part of their charter.
Great program.
yeah, I mean, I usually gave all my old computers to Hilltop, and they didn't look that horse in the mouth. They were very happy to have them. But,
Well, and you're right, Tom. I probably should have called.
I mean, he could take care of it.
explained to him, but I was,
Yeah, I'm sorry for that experience though.
You know, Terry, your little story there, it's kind of an indication of the kind of people that are on this committee, Really good people. It'd be nice to have it recognized more. Okay, anything else?
I think so.
My next
Next meeting.
meeting is at Montgomery.
Middle school library, brand new
I
school.
was there.
Robert did a pre-check.
5:30, and I do think, and Terry mentions every time he sees me, and it's a good thing he does mention, I do think we do, aside from having the meeting next month at Montgomery, is we have more site
Yeah.
tours.
Let's go on a tour of Montgomery High School, new construction. It's gonna, in the next month, it's gonna really take off,
That
guys.
would be good.
That'd be good, maybe in the,
What's the pleasure of the committee for some times that work best?
well,
Let's do it before the time change, before it gets dark too early.
late afternoon.
So, 4,
I don't know, I'm
Yeah, I mean,
retired.
it's really dusk by
Tracks,
7 now,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
well,
time
6:30,
change is
6:30.
fast upon us.
Exactly.
So-
So 6:30 is, I think the sun goes down before 6:30 now.
Yeah, so, it's 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
4?
Yeah.
4 o'clock? Okay, any days better than others? Wednesdays, Thursdays,
If we don't go to the
Tuesdays?
CBOC meeting, Wednesday's good, Thursday's sometimes bad for me.
Tuesdays are bad for me in the evenings, the rest of the fun.
So Wednesdays or Thursdays?
Yeah,
Wednesdays are better. Thursdays are
Okay.
better.
have your
Wednesday.
seconds call my
So
seconds.
let's do it a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And if we do it at 4 at the next DOC meeting, we could tour it, then we could go over to Montgomery Middle, which is right down the street. I mean, that's a,
Well, or we could go to BJ's and
Have some
Where?
avocado rolls.
have pulled pork and some craft beer. There's nothing that says we can't enjoy ourselves.
Oh, God, that's fine.
so is the pleasure of the
Yeah.
committee to
Oh, it's like
agendize your tour or to not agendize your tour?
We have to go.
There's not good-
Out of an excess of caution, throw it on the agenda, but
Sure.
Let's do it the
if
same day.
civilians show up, we're gonna have to be able to accommodate them as we walk around.
Do it the same day.
And why not?
So we'll do it the same day, and we'll start the meeting at Montgomery High at
Finish it
4,
at the library.
adjourn,
Yeah.
and re-adjourn at 6.
And we did that before when we were early on the committee like this.
Okay, that works. Sounds good. That way we're only burning one day.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned at 8:17.
8:17, 45 seconds.